Cast, yeah?
Yeah, is Melissa here?
I think she should be here any minute. I'll make sure to send her a message really quick. But she should be here soon. I just sent a message. Hopefully she'll be here any minute. She did say she was on another call. So let's get going. Chloe, over to you.
Yeah, are we recording?
Yeah.
So hi everyone, thanks for joining us today in our next series of zStudents webinars. Today's session is on Tech for Good, Make Your Mark. We're going to be learning about how you can use your technology skills to have a good influence on the world. And we have an amazing set of panels today which all have various experience in this. So firstly, let me introduce myself. My name's Chloe. I'm a third year physics student at university in England. I'm a Z ambassador and I've been conducting the student-led webinars with Ella.
Yeah, and I'm Lella. I'm 16 years old, extremely passionate for tech for good, social impact, and just making the world a better place through the power of technology. I think series is part of it and a stepping stone towards making good tech for good and making the world tech more accessible for people. So it's a step in the right direction. To give you an idea of what to expect on this panel and these episodes, if you're new here, we're going to be hosting lots of different fireside chats and hopefully have collaborative coding opportunities, master the mainframe discussions, and more set to come. So you're in the right place. Make sure to use the hashtag zStudents on your social media of your choice so we can spread the student message and hopefully big up the volume of the student voice as the more people we get tweeting and sharing their experiences, hopefully the more opportunities will come our way. So on to our amazing panel. Chloe?
Yeah, so Melissa hopefully will be joining us soon. So Ali, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us why you're on our panel today?
Awesome. So my name is Ali Serag, and up until last year, I was a full-time undergrad student at the University of British Columbia. I'm super passionate about hacking together technological solutions for good and have been doing it since my first year in uni. I'm also very deeply involved with the entrepreneurial and startup community here in beautiful Vancouver, Canada, and have been leading an international startup for the last year and a half or so. And I'm here because I think I can share a very interesting and relevant perspective on a student's journey into tech for good, as well as the entrepreneurial landscape.
Awesome.
Malek.
Hello.
Do you want to introduce yourself? Can you hear us?
All right. So I'm Malek Omri. I think I'm here today because I've been in Tech for Good and I've been advocating for Tech for Good for years now. I came from Tunisia, which is a country now. There's a lot of, hacking going over there using tech. So I've been through a community they have startups that usually tech, and they've been like advancing the society over there. I'm computer science engineering student, international students now, and that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. And so when Melissa gets a chance to join, we'll let her introduce herself as well. But I think we'll go straight into the first question for our panel, and that's, what is tech for good then for you? So whoever wants to take it.
So I guess I could start it off. So I don't mean to sound cheesy, but at its core, I do believe that tech for good is literally just doing magic. And there's the super famous quote by Arthur C. Clarke that I'm sure many of you guys heard about. And it says something like, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But it goes even deeper than that. I recently learned that the etymology of the word magic comes from thousands of years ago, this Proto-Indo-European word, mag, which means to be able or to help. And really at the core of Tech for Good, it's how do we leverage our tools available to us to create the biggest and best impact for as many people as possible. And I think it's a super exciting time to be doing tech for good. It's one of the few industries where, you know, one weekend of thought, of energy, of passion could end up catalyzing in a positive change in the lives of millions of people. There's nothing in the world that can do anything even remotely to that. Whether you go into medicine or engineering, two things that are super valuable, still like nothing goes to the scale of tech. So it's something super important. It's something we've always been doing from the beginning of mankind. It's just been exponentially increasing in how much you can do to this day.
I love that. And who wouldn't want to be a magician? So if tech can bring you one step closer to that, why aren't people wanting to get involved? And Malek, what does it mean to you?
All right. I think tech for good for me has meaning of starting by inspecting society and see what problem we really have. And after that, see what we can do for it to change it through technology. So what tech available for us, as Ali said, what tools are available. And after that, we can go from that way of inspecting and searching for problems until doing a positive change in society. So a positive change society can be from people that really experts in tech, or can came from students. They're really like discovering technology and how they can go the process of using what they're studying to solve that. So I think tech for good is a hack in society, how you can hack your society in other way. You can use your imagination. You can be a magician, as he said, but you cannot really be in contact with your government or something like that. So you can use the assets you have in order to make a change.
I love that. So you mentioned magic, you've mentioned making change through the power of tech. What is it that you do, and how is that tech for good? How did you how did you enter the field, and what is it you're currently doing in the field?
So I started in Tunisia years ago with the Social Good Summit. So the Social Good Summit, it's a big conference that happens in New York every year, and meanwhile it happens in other countries. So what we try is we advocate for it in Tunisia, so people know more and they can do more on it. And also we have done like some hackathons, so we introduce it to some people that that have the assets, and let them know how you can use this to make a change in society, how you can hack transportation, how you can hack any field that you think or you imagine that tech can really change it and make it easier for people. So we have been doing that in Tunisia for a while, and after that I started advocating internationally. So I attended many times the Social Good Summit in New York, and I have a chance to organize like live Social Good Summit meanwhile in Tunisia. So it was a good experience.
I've just seen Melissa pop in. Do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry about the link muddle up. I don't know what exactly happened.
No worries, it's probably my fault. So sorry about the background. It's early in the morning for me, and sorry for joining late. I was having trouble getting into the Zoom. So I'm Melissa Sassi. Thank you to all of you for taking part in this session. I'll quickly introduce myself so we don't spend much time talking about me. So I head up the IBM Hyperprotect Accelerator at IBM. It's a startup accelerator that focuses on empowering early stage startups with mentorship, access to technology, and it's all about helping founders build and scale their technology businesses. I focus on fintech, health tech, and insurtech. That's part of my role. I wear a lot of hats, as Lala and Chloe, Malek, and Ali know. I also head up the IBMz Global Student Hub. So for me, my life is really about entrepreneurship, empowering young people with digital skills, and really making meaningful use of the internet. I have my own nonprofit actually in Tunisia. So Assalamu Malek, inshallah intak labez.
Thank you.
And we have taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries. We have a robotics lab, an IoT lab, and a co-working space. We have a partnership with the U.S. Department of State out of DC, where they gave us funding to cover our program for a year, and we've actively partnered together with Google, HP, SAP, and UNESCO, all in that same concept of how do we empower young people. My organization is all youth-led and youth-run, so everyone is, I have one person besides me, because I may look younger sometimes depending upon whether I fix myself up or not, but all of the people in the team are under the age of 35, and when I say all of them, one of them is under the age of 35, the rest are under the age of 25. Everyone does they do the pitches, they do the contracts, and are really running the show. I'm there to provide mentorship, or if everybody starts fighting, I come in to kind of help people stop fighting, hopefully not making it worse. No, I'm just kidding. I am also the chair of the Digital Skills Working Group within IEEE, which is the largest engineering organization on the planet with 400,000 members worldwide. What we're doing is trying to establish a standard for what it means to be digitally literate. And the whole concept is we measure literacy. So why shouldn't we measure the new literacy, which is digital literacy? And how do you measure progress if you don't have a definition of what something means? You don't know whether you're failing or succeeding. And we've been very successful to set up a coalition with the World Economic Forum, the OECD, and the IEEE to really kind of think about how do we take this forward? We've been having a number of working group sessions with the United Nations, so specifically the IT branch of the UN, really thinking about how do we get UN endorsement in what we're doing. So it's a whole lot about the different hats I wear. I do have my own startup as well. I talk a lot about entrepreneurship, and it's hard to be an entrepreneur, it's hard to be an intrapreneur, and many of us are balancing a lot of things in life. But I think the big thing that I try to look at is you don't have to trade between being an intrapreneur, being an entrepreneur, being a social entrepreneur. There's a way to incorporate social good and tech for good into all of the things that we do if you want to, and I can give you some tips on how I've done it. So that's again a whole lot about me.
I love that. And the fact that you say that you don't have to just put yourself into one box, I think that's really important. And as the workforce is constantly changing, that's really good to hear. Ali and Malek, do you find yourself doing that? Do you find yourself jumping between hats as Melissa does? Or have you just dedicated your work life to Tech for Good? How's it been for you?
No, absolutely 100% agree with Melissa. It's the life of an entrepreneur is, okay, what resources or tools can I get together to accomplish a certain task? And that essentially summarizes how I even look at technology. Like a lot of people say like, oh, I'm passionate about technology, but personally for me, I've never been passionate about technology in that way, so much as I couldn't see how someone could be passionate about a screwdriver or a hammer as much as what that hammer could do. It could build a house for your loved ones. It could build a wall to keep you safe or the people you care about safe. So I'm much more passionate about outcomes, and technology, software, language, it's just a tool to accomplish those goals that I'm passionate about. And in your array, there's millions of different tools, from pitching to Canva, like you were saying earlier.
Real quick, Lella, I was just thinking about something that Ali said, and I really see technology as something that is solving problems. And it could be, a world problem. It could be, any problem. It could be something that you're trying to solve for you, your family, your community. When I run my coding camps, I always think about, empowering people to think about what is the problem that they're solving, and how is technology going to help solve that problem, whatever that problem is for your audience. And, that's really what technology is. It's creating solutions to problems.
Awesome. So like all your journeys are very different but very inspiring. Was there particular points that as you were venturing into sort of this field that you realized how much of a difference you're making? Was there something maybe pivotal that you realized, oh wow, this is great what I'm doing?
I have a story. I actually won a Microsoft hackathon. And I ended up growing. So I'll kind of take a couple steps back. My family lacked access to technology, and I set out on this mission to kind of figure out how could young people gain access to technology in one classroom. And I didn't set out to change the world or be on this big, this big mission of, wow, I'm going to have a nonprofit that is going to be, operating in Pakistan and Bangladesh and Syrian refugee camps and, refugee camps in Malawi. I set out to bring computers to a classroom, actually my daughter's classroom. And, I was looking at what I was working on at Microsoft. I'm at IBM now, but back in, when I was a Microsoftie, but I guess they say once you're a Microsoftie, you're always a Microsoftie. So maybe Arvin, my CEO, might disagree with that, but we'll arm wrestle over that tomorrow. I looked at where could I get devices for my daughter's classroom, and I looked at my employer and thought, wow, I work at Microsoft. What can I do? And what ended up starting as me thinking about how do I get 30 computers into one classroom ended up being a collaboration between Microsoft and HP to bring 400 laptops to 20 schools across Tunisia, and then a digital skills movement. And what really changed things for me is I was able to get these computers into Tunisia through this employee hackathon. There were about 4,000 teams from, more than 100 countries participating in this hackathon. My team grew to about 60 people from around the world, and I won the hackathon. Our team won, out of 4,000 teams. We won in the Inspired Me category, and we won across, globally and in our local hackathon. Our team almost cried, like, oh my gosh, we actually made this big change. And I had an opportunity to pitch to Satya Nadella. And he and I were standing there talking, and I wasn't supposed to meet him. I actually stepped in front of him, and he was walking my way, and my teammates said, Satya's coming your way, step in front of him. And I'm like, I can't step in front of him. He's like, one of the most powerful technology decision makers on the planet, and he's our CEO. I can't step in front of him. You were stepping in front of him, and you're going to give him your 30-minute pitch. And so I stepped in front of him, and he couldn't move. He had to talk to me, and there were all these cameras around, and his handlers, and I could tell his handlers like, this is not on script, because they had this plan of what they were going to do. And I just took that as my opportunity to take a risk, to go big, and to share my idea. And I stepped in front of him, and I said, did you know that Microsoft recycles hundreds of thousands of computers, and we don't put them into the hands of underserved communities and live our mission of empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more? And he said, no, I didn't know that. And I said, let me tell you about our project. I would like to make a change and put those devices into the hands of nonprofits, if you will let me. And he nodded to his person, and I gave him a t-shirt. I gave him a flyer. I don't know if he ever took our cat t-shirt and did anything with it. I never saw him in it. That's okay. But what we ended up being able to do was roll out a new policy across every Microsoft office on the planet that enabled those devices that weren't connected to the Microsoft network. So many of the devices used for demos, in retail environments, that sort of thing, to go out to nonprofits. So I recently, saw the president of Microsoft talking about how they were doing this device giving drive, and they were reformatting those devices to put them into the hands of nonprofits. And when I saw that post in LinkedIn, I knew that I was the reason and my team was the reason that this happened. Now, I wasn't mentioned anywhere in the press. I was a hidden figure in this particular project, like many of us are, but I know that I changed the lives of, you know, hundreds of thousands of people through these devices, whether, you know, anybody spoke about it or not. Now, it's not just about devices. You've got to have skills. You have to have access to the internet. So it's not just about how do I give you a physical device and all of a sudden you're empowered. It was 2 years of work that ended up turning into my life's work, which is digital inclusion of young people.
That's just amazing. I feel like we're watching some, I don't know, a Queen's speech or something in Tech for Good. Absolutely just inspirational. I hear
I'm not wearing a crown, but I do have a penguin shirt on.
Dressed for the occasion.
Hey, I am the chief penguin, you know.
So Malek, from a more different perspective, how did you get started in Tech for Good? Was it through a hackathon? What kind of opportunity got you into the area?
So Tech for Good, I think I started my journey one time when we had this competition in Tunis about public transportation. So it was, I was one of the organizers of this competition, and it has to address the public transportation in Tunis. So public transportation in Tunis is one of the problems in society. There is no data, there is nothing that could help startups build or scale their startups too. So I think one of the most amazing things that I have to go through is how to collect data and make it available for people that are going to compete. So I think that was one of the things that I think I'm really proud to do with my team, because we really made administration transform themselves from writing on papers to write like on Excel and transform that data and make it public, I mean, to anyone. So it was one of the hard mission, how to transform all the public transportation networks into like numbers, into dates, into times. So and from that time I had like, I was receiving like many emails, many calls from people that would like to use that data to make change, to make startups. They have ideas, they want to do applications, they want to have websites. So I think one of the things that Tech for Good like really changing societies is to digitalize the society itself. So that was one of the more important things. And from that time, I thought that we really can do something like through social for good. And just we can really start from there and like go forward using Tech for Good, and how we can like make it really work. So that was like one of the most amazing things that we had to do. And from that I started like searching how startups and how a person can do business same time, like get money and same time helping his society. So we all together started that journey from there. So
And Ali, I remember you mentioning offline that you'd been involved in a project for homeless people. Do you want to expand a bit more on that? Because I think there have been so many different ideas thrown about, and I found that one really impressive too.
Awesome. So I just looked at the poll and I noticed that the majority of people that answered are in universities. So that whole homeless digital ID project started with university. And in fact, my journey into tech and Tech for Good started in my first year at the University of British Columbia. And my journey has just been wrought with questions from day one to today. Questions like, oh, what do I even study in university? Like, how am I supposed to know that I'm going to spend like the rest of my life in psychology or economics or programming if I've never actually done those things before? And I was raking my head with this question, like, what do I want to like dedicate the rest of my life to when I was finishing off high school and going into uni? And a lot of the people I know, you know, from day one, it seems like they know exactly what their path is. Like, oh, I'm meant for this. This is my passion. That wasn't me. I had no idea. I was interested in everything. I was super empathetic. I wanted to solve problems. I wanted to make a difference. like a lot of people in my generation, but I was just so interested in everything. So my first year, I took courses in literally everything: English, economics, psychology, and one computer science class. And when I took that class, I was blown away. Like I got the highest grades I've ever gotten. I was super excited about it. I would finish one assignment and then for the next 4 days, just add extensions and new things. And then when my TA in university would see that, they'd go like, you know, why are all the variable names like, you know, TA names? I'm like, what is going on here? Like, you went 10 times more than what we expected for this project. And I was like, I know, I got super excited about it. I wouldn't do it just for the marks. I did it because I was passionate about it. And I remember I talked to my mentor at the time, and I was like, you know, I never thought I really liked math, but I feel I'm really good at coding, and I think I really love it. But I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what I should do. And my mentor gave me advice that has stuck to me to this day. And he said, Ali, is programming your hobby, or is it something that you're talented at? And I said, well, you know, I would consider it more something that I'm pretty good at, but I wouldn't see it as so much of a hobby. And he said, what about the other things you're interested in? You're interested in philosophy, you're interested in filmmaking. And I said, yeah, it's something that I see as a hobby. I really enjoy doing it. And he told me, Ali, like things like poetry, things like filmmaking, things like typical hobbies, you do them because you have intrinsic motivation. And once you attach extrinsic motivation to it, a lot of the times, if you're getting paid like to work on writing poetry 8 hours a day, or making films 8 hours a day, or reading 8 hours a day, like you lose that drive, that passion. And he kind of convinced me at that time that the best thing in the world for me would be to go into tech, because I was marginally great at it and I could do it for hours and hours on end. And I really loved what it could do. And once I came to that conclusion in my first year, the first thing I did was I went to my mom, and my mom's an occupational therapist, and she works with a lot of cognitive retraining, people recovering from Alzheimer's and stroke. She does a lot of these like mini games to help them in recovering. And I told her, Mama, you know, what is the one thing that is the most redundant that you do with your patients every single day? And she told me about these games she plays to check, you know, their current cognitive status, like start at 100, subtract 3, and then subtract 3 from that, see how many errors they have. And she just named a bunch of games that she does with her patients every single day. So I told her, Mom, I'm going to put you out of work. So my first ever project in school was, like apart from school, was to create this cognitive retraining tool for people that were recovering from strokes and Alzheimer's. And when I showed it to my mom was blown away. She was like, oh, wow, this is super exciting. And she actually started using that with her patients. And I was like, oh, wow, like this all just came into my head. And now this is a real thing in the real world impacting real people. And shortly after that, I decided to start a nonprofit called Lightbite. And the whole idea of that was I was really involved with nonprofits in my local city. And Lightbite's goal was to match a lot of these nonprofits who tend to be run by older and more tech illiterate people with technology that could scale their impact, whether it's a local food bank or a detox center. And it was really through that I met other students at my university and started a project to create a digital ID for the homeless in our city. Because we found that one big problem was a lot of the homeless individuals, their living conditions was such that it wasn't conducive to holding a physical piece of ID, right? If you had to go to a detox center is like, if you're recovering from a drug addiction, they're going to want to know who you are so that they don't give you more injections than you've already had. Like they don't want to overdose you. And the vast majority of these homeless individuals not having a physical piece of ID, they just couldn't access those resources. And then there's other nonprofits who are worried about double dipping, and they wanted to give a fair amount of resources and tools to people in the community. And they weren't able to really adequately do that. Some people would hoard, they weren't able to give it to others that really needed it. And we were like, okay, like what do we have? We have biometrics we could work with, we have facial recognition, we have blockchain, we can kind of digitize some biometric information and store it on a block. Like we came up with this like, this comprehensive prototype of a digital ID. And while we were working on that, we got a lot of exposure with professors at our university, and they ended up becoming evangelists and supporters for that. And the project was awesome. And that was really the first major Tech for Good project that I led. And it ended up getting a ton of traction. We were featured in a bunch of newspapers locally. And that kind of kicked off my journey towards Tech for Good in general. And I remember at that time, interestingly enough, I was sitting with my now co-founder at our startup, Salman, and I kind of got surrounded by this culture of wanting to work at the FANG companies, like the top tech companies. Everyone in my comp sci cohort, they were like, oh, you know, goal in life should be work at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple. Like, they're fantastic companies. And I would do these practice coding problems on like Leet Code and Hanker Rank every single night, trying to get an internship at one of the big tech companies. And Salman, my co-founder now, he came to me and said, like, Ali, what do you want to do in life? And I told him, Sal, you know, after university, I would love nothing more than to work at one of the top 5 tech companies. And he told me, why do you want to work at a company like Google? And I told him, well, haven't you heard, you know, like where Gmail came from? They have a day every week where you could work on passion projects and do whatever you want. And they have like these super futuristic toilets from Japan that are from like 200 years of the future. And Sal looked at me with like the most stone cold face. And he was like, Ali, are you telling me your purpose in life is to have futuristic toilets and to have a day a week to work on whatever you want? Like, nothing's preventing you in school right now from working on whatever you want. In fact, like, the barrier to working on what you're passionate about in university is so low compared to any other time in your life. You know, in university, you try an initiative, you start a startup, you start a nonprofit. If it fails, what happens? Like, you just go back to school, you finish your degree, you lose very little. You don't have like a family relying on you. You're not losing the super high paying job. Like, the opportunity costs, the things that you're missing out on for taking that chance are super low, but the potential benefits remain the same. So after that conversation, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to just put everything down. I'm going to work on as much Tech for Good projects as I can, as well as start my own startup. And that's how my journey pretty much started.
Absolutely incredible. I've just seen JJ's comment in the chat, who's one of our fellow STEMettes over here in the UK. So hello, JJ. She's discussing the importance of hackathons. And I know that lots of our panelists today have been involved in them. And that's kind of where they got started and first explored the area of Tech for Good. So Ali or Malek or Melissa, anyone feel free to jump in and share just how important it is. I know, Melissa, you played a massive role in getting Code the Curve off the ground. So that was an absolutely amazing experience. So do you want to talk a bit about the importance of those?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that that people need to realize is that hackathons, just like companies, just like everyday life, is not just about, you know, one skill set. You know, I think there's this big misconception that hackathons are for programmers or data scientists or, you know, techie guys in their underwear in a basement, you know. I don't know if Ali and Malek are sitting there coding in their underwear in their basements, but my mind just exploded. And
4 days a week.
I don't know. I might want to throw up in my mouth right now. No, I'm just kidding, guys. But you know, it's not just about, you know, technologists. It's not just about, you know, coders or, you know, someone who knows how to code. You need project managers. You need marketing. You need, you know, people who know about business modeling and finance. You know, I think what I realized in participating in the hackathon that I did at Microsoft was that, wow, it's not just for coders. And that's what I thought before, is I don't know how to code. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I can't go in and do this. And I realized that I have other skills that can bring technologists together to build a problem that I know about, and somewhere, you know, something that deeply, you know, impacted me, and I can inspire them to create solutions that they may not have thought about before, you know. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is hackathons have a very interesting way of bringing people together. So I created a hackathon called Code the Curve, and it was a collaboration between IBM, UNESCO, SAP, and about 10 other partners, including UN Equals, Internet Society, and a lot of just Angel Hack, iHack Online, a lot of really amazing organizations, and everybody volunteered their time, and it was all about fighting back against COVID-19 with education, solving education and social issues, healthcare issues, and access to data, including fighting media misinformation and disinformation. And, what I realized is it brought IBMers together, and it brought, me together actually with Ali, with Lella, with Malek, and I think it strengthened our, relationships in other ways. I've worked with Ali on other topics, but I think it, brought a different spin to, our professional relationship. And, I think when you are participating in a hackathon, you're working your ass off to, spend time in the weekend and at night, and in some cases you're doing something for 24 hours. That seems crazy, but when you're in the thick of it, it's like exhilarating and exciting and scary. And it brings this team element to things. It teaches you about problem solving. It teaches you about team dynamics. It teaches you about conflict resolution. Because I think when you have a team, you're not always going to agree upon what the solution is. You're not always going to agree upon everything. And it teaches you how to really think about how do you better work together with others. And regardless of what your background is or your skill set, those are always things that we all need to learn. And there are always ways now of finding virtual hackathons. There are ways of spinning up your own hackathon. And it doesn't need to be this, big drawn out thing. It could be you and your friends hacking into something. And using the word hack, I think with older audience, they're like, what are you hacking? And are you going to get in trouble? And I'm like, well, we're not really hacking. It's not really, what's going on. We're kind of hacking into new ideas, They're like, oh, okay, I get it now. No, you're not going around and breaking into banks and stealing money. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. But thanks, Dad.
It's completely tech for good related, isn't it? It's the complete opposite. We're not being like criminals. Chloe, what was it you were wanting to ask?
Yeah, so I think a nice follow-up from that actually is, like probably everyone here, we're all feeling very inspired right now to sort of go out and have a go at all these different things. How do you find it then with all these sort of different hats you wear, like managing time? How do you devote enough to each thing and making sure that you're, still playing an important role in like the projects you have?
You don't, and you fail, because I think, at least I shouldn't say you, I know I do, because, and Lila knows this, like I have all these things I want to do, like all of us, but there's not enough time in the day to do all the things that you want to do. There are times where, my team has to remind me, hey, Melissa, we were supposed to do this, or hey, I need you to do this. And I think that's the importance of kind of trying to manage yourself, knowing that it's hard and you're going to have to prioritize and you're not going to be able to do all the things that you want to do. But also having a great squad around you who can help recognize when you need to get things done and do things and help to prioritize when you're not. I often ask others, because I know one of my weaknesses is time management. I accept too many things. I do too many things. I take on way too much stuff. And so often to my detriment and my team's detriment. And so I'm open and honest about that. And I say, I need help here. I'm going to fail you unless you, help to stay on me about this. But I think it's also about like being honest with, others and yourself about what's possible, and knowing when you have to say no, and knowing sometimes you're going to say yes when you shouldn't have. But, how do you still maintain relationships along the way?
And to build upon that, like I do think it comes down to communication, and like communicating with all the relevant parties, like, hey, this thing came up, and just letting them know if you're not going to be able to hit certain deadlines for whatever reason, and give the rationale. But for me, Early on, one tool that I started using that I absolutely love is something called Cascade. And it's essentially a Chrome browser plugin, as well as like a tool you could download as an app on your phone. And it's like the perfect to-do tool for me. What I found though was very quickly after installing it, endless to-do list started forming. Like I have a backlog that probably would take me like 4 months to finish if I just sat down and worked on it. What helped me was instituting with those to-dos. Like every single morning I get up, I go like, what are the top things that I want to get out of today? Like what would I need to do today to consider today absolutely phenomenal? And I write, like I just spend the first 10, 15 minutes of the day brainstorming all of those things across so many different sections. Like, okay, for Foster, my startup, these are the to-dos. For this social good project, these are the to-dos. For this nonprofit, these are the to-dos. And then what I do is there's something called the Eisenhower matrix, and it essentially divides things into what is urgent and what is important. So they have 4 different quadrants. Quadrant number 1, which is your highest priority, are things that are important and urgent. And then you have things that are important, not urgent, things that are not important but urgent, and things that are not important and not urgent. And you'll find a lot of the times, the majority of your to-dos are either, they fall into the category of important but not super urgent. So that's just my take on how I try to keep up with it all. But it is a challenge.
Sounds like I need to have a one-on-one with Ali so he can school me on how I can get my shit together.
He knows all these little hacks and things. It's brilliant.
Or I just need to hire Ali to just follow me around. Not that Ali wants that as a job, because that would suck.
You're the chief penguin. I would love to. Like you live.
Yeah, you could be my deputy penguin. Like just get me, like make sure I get my stuff done.
Just sit there, have him as a Chrome extension or something to keep you motivated.
I know. I think unfortunately, just Ali. Not that Ali is not enough, but if you look at all the things I got going on, I think I need all of, I need a clone maybe. I don't know if the world's ready for that, but
Yeah.
And then in terms of bringing your idea off the ground, I think as a student, you're quite limited to funding opportunities, and hackathons take a lot of time to plan and probably source as well. So in between hackathons and when you might have an idea, I know I've had 1 or 2 over the summer in terms of what I want to do to make tech a more accessible place for people. How do you get an idea off as it being a student and not really having lots of networks to tap into?
So if I could go, I think definitely there's this thing that necessity breeds innovation, and those lack of resources end up forcing you to be super, super creative and thinking outside the box. As a student, you have almost like a superpower. No one, like few people will tell you this, but as a student, you have a lot more power and influence than when you're working full-time in a company. No one wants to be the jerk that says no to a student or turns them down. Everyone wants to support you in your growth and your journey. Even if that means like messaging a top executive at a local tech company, or going to your university administration and saying like, hey, I have this initiative, like, can I book out these 10 rooms for this hackathon for free? Most universities have some sort of mechanism that you could book out rooms and start a hackathon. And tons of them, I know mine here have that kind of mini funding for student-led projects. And your question about how do you really take things off, it kind of goes to my perspective on hackathons. I think all of us have New Year's resolutions or specific to-dos in our backlogs on learning new tech skills. And another additional thing, other than of course getting free shirts that hackathons offer, is essentially putting you into the boiling point. And I watched an interesting video about lobsters and how they grow. And the speaker in the video was saying that a lobster, it starts growing too big for its shell. It causes it so much pain. That pain forces it to go behind a rock, like remove its shell and then grow a new one. And that's what actually makes it grow. That pain and going through that heat forces the lobster to grow. And I think hackathons for starting projects are the perfect place on an individual basis to just go into the heat of it. 48 hours, all those skills you've been procrastinating learning, forces you to actually learn them. And I swear to God, like some of my best friends in the world, people I still meet regularly today, I bonded with them through hackathons. It's almost like the military. It's almost like the analogy of the magicians, like going like Frodo Baggins and Gandalf to Mordor. You're all going on this epic quest or journey that's super stressful. At the end, you're in tears of joy. You've learned a hell of a lot, but you're super closer after that with those guys. And you have taken off projects that you've been procrastinating and learning skills that you've been procrastinating. So hope that answers that.
We've had everything from magic to lobsters to everything, all to do with tech. So when people say tech is not for me, think again.
Exactly.
Chloe, go on.
Yeah, so is there a certain point then, do you think, that once you've got sort of your project off the ground and you're starting to like really build on it, is there a point that you need to maybe look for funding and get some more income for it to like progress it further?
Yeah, and forgive me, I'm making a coffee while I'm talking to you. It's coffee time. So in case you notice my background has changed, you know, I think that you know, as you grow your idea, there's a point where you need funding. You know, Lala knows very well that, you know, I'm working on, you know, with our team building a new edtech platform, and you know, your developers are only going to volunteer for so much time. You know, they're not going to volunteer forever. You know, they're going to want something out of it, just like I want something out of it, just like my chief learning officer wants something out of it. And you know, that could be access to funding, and that could be access to, you know, equity by starting up a company. I'm still figuring this out, and I tell you, in the last, 2 weeks, I've probably looked at 60 pitch decks for my job. So I know how to pitch. I know how to create pitch decks. I know how to evaluate pitch decks. I know how to help companies get access to funding. But when it comes to me, I have not raised nearly the amount of money that I should, that I could. But I think that it's a hard endeavor, no matter how old you are, no matter what your gender is. There are certain things that are stacked against us when it comes to going after funding. You know, so for example, if you look at VC funding in the US, last year of venture capital funding, only 2.7, something like that, 2.7%. I hope I'm getting the number right. I know I'm pretty close, of venture capital, you know, funding activities went to female founders. And I think those numbers are even more dismal when you look at youth. They're dismal when you look at Black founders. And so I think it's really important that the VC industry changes. So it's not just about, you know, how do you come up with amazing ideas? How do you pitch well? There's a fundamental disconnect, and there's a fundamental problem when it comes to VC funding. I'm trying to change that through my role at IBM. We had about 1 to 3% of our applicants for my startup program, you know, were diverse in nature. And when I say diverse in nature, I'm meaning combining females, the Latinx community, Black founders, you know, Native American founders, et cetera. And now I just got my applications in. We closed our application process on Sunday, and we've got about 50% female diversity, which I'm really excited about. This probably, and I need to verify it, but it probably knocks every other tech company out of the water. I'm saying probably because I don't have data on it. I hope to have some data on it soon. And then about 20% of our shortlisted applicants have at least one Black founder. So there are tactics that, you know, people in power positions or decision-making positions like I am can do to help make it better. But if I look across, you know, our cohort of 15 startups, you know, there aren't many of them that I would consider, you know, many of the founders that I would consider a young person. So I think that there still is a lot of movement that we need to do as, you know, professionals in big tech companies and venture capitalists to open up opportunities for young people to gain access to funding, whether that's just seed funding or, you know, or whatever else. And then I think for those of us who are doing things on the side, we need to do a better job of figuring out how do we gain access to that funding. But I think for me, it's often about prioritization of time. I try to do too many things, so I'm not full-time pitching for opportunities or going after funding. I should, you know. I don't know, Ali, if you've got any comments on access to funding. I know that's something that is near and dear to you, and something that, you know, you equally share as being hard.
Yeah, no, 100%, Melissa. I agree with everything you said, especially with the lack of representation and funding opportunities for minorities across the board. And it has, like, it's a full-time job for any founder. It's a full-time job apart from your job of coding and building a company, just going and hounding down investors and convincing VCs to invest in you. With venture capitalists, it's almost like dating. It's almost like courtship. You have to spend a ton of time, and there's all of these,
I think it's like a bad Tinder date sometimes.
Exactly. And it's painful. Like, for us, the average age on our team is 20, 24. We all started, like, last year, all of us were in university, and actually 23. And, like, even in the accelerator program we went to, the youngest age group after us was like 40s. Like, in the industry, in financial technology, it's dominated by an older mindset. And then the VCs for the industry, like, the second they realize, okay, like, most of these guys are in their early 20s, they start applying these biases and thinking, like, okay, like, how experienced really are these guys? Like, you know, what do they have under their belts? Can they actually do it? And that creates barriers. And for us, the way we've been trying to combat that was trying to get a super experienced advisory board around us, people that have had industry experience for 40 years in what we're working on, to add to that credibility and to hit that age check mark, because we didn't have it in our team.
It's hard, because I think when, you know, often when accelerators or VCs are looking at, you know, who they're going to fund, you know, they look at, you know, are you an experienced founder? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very thankful that I have, you know, Ali and his team on, you know, in our accelerator, because one of the things that I noticed in our application pool is that we lacked, you know, young founders. And you know, I'm very thankful that we have Ali there to, you know, represent, but that's, you know, one company out of, you know, in terms of the C-suite, if you will. You know, a lot of our startups have, you know, young developers or, you know, young folks who are, you know, taking on different tasks in the startup, but, you know, someone in the C-suite. And it's hard. You know, I look at the individuals who I've been interviewing for our next cohort, which I'm onboarding 30 new startups into our program. Last year I had 15, so I'm tripling the size of my program. Thank you, IBM, for giving me budget to do that. But, you know, I look at all the interviews, and, you know, I think we've done a good job of driving diversity and inclusion, or we will once we make our announcement of the 30, you know, across female founders and other, you know, minorities. But, you know, youth entrepreneurship is still something that is a challenge, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to build my nonprofit, is to make it youth-led and youth-run, and making sure youth was at the center, and that, you know, they had real opportunities to build and create and fail, and, you know that I'd still have their back if they didn't secure, you know, contracts or funding or whatever, that I'd still have, you know, they'd still have my support. And sometimes having that advisory board or that squad to advise you is, I think, what helps to propel, you know, youth entrepreneurship. It's hard sometimes on your own, because you might lack, you know, a number of years of experience, which I don't think years of experience is an indicator of, you know, success or the ability to problem solve. But unfortunately, in the world, a lot of people still see it that way, and see the world as very, very hierarchical, especially in, you know, some parts of the world where it's more pronounced than others.
And I fully think things that, like, what Melissa's working on is one of the strongest paths towards making that change, because you could think of it like this vicious cycle. Like, who becomes investors? A lot of the times it's people that, you know, struck it big or sold or exited their company, and a lot of the times they didn't come from representative groups, right? So the only way to really break that cycle is to get more representation in the startups themselves, get more exiting startups that are representative, and then those guys will eventually become investors themselves. Like, I don't know if you could add on that, Melissa, or that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's also that change that's happening in the VC world where you have, you know, different underserved communities that are coming in and saying, all right, big VC, you haven't solved this, so I'm going to go out and create my own VC, and I'm going to invest in Black founders, or I'm going to, you know, I'd look at an example of one of the organizations that I partner with, which is Female Founders Alliance, and the work that Female Founders Alliance is doing. They've got probably, I don't know, 30,000 female founders in their network, and you know, they run accelerators, they run incubation activities, they help connect them to, you know, VCs that are trying to make a difference when it comes to investing in this area. So I think that it takes an army and it takes a squad, and it's not just about me as a woman saying we need to invest more in female founders. It also takes men saying, hey, you know what, our customer base is 50% women, or whatever the number is in each particular market, or each particular industry segment. But if 50% of my customer is, you know, of my customer base is from X community or X gender, you know, then how do I make sure that my team is representative of my audience? And it's really incorporating that idea of design thinking, you know, user-centered design, and how do you think about who is your audience and how do you incorporate them appropriately into your leadership team, in your advisory board, and also, you know, those that are making decisions, whether that's investment or whatever else.
So unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour. Although I'd love this conversation to go on and on, I think it's the end of the time, so we have to wrap up. But I want to say thank you to our panelists and thank you to everyone attending. I know it's super early for lots of time zones, so that might be because of that might be the reason why we've got the low numbers. But hopefully we will have some be back to normal times very soon. So thank you once again. And as I've just seen, Judy has put in the chat, we have got a quick feedback survey so we can keep these webinars going and make sure that we are creating content people are interested in. So if you're interested and would like to share your thoughts, do let us know via the feedback link. Thank you everyone for attending, and yeah,
thank you for having us, Lela, Chloe, everyone, and sorry once again for being late, but better late than never, right?
Awesome. Make sure to keep the conversation going as well on the Student Hub, and we'll hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time.
Oh, you know what we should do before we go? I should share one thing. We have an event coming up on September 15th. I am running 2 of the tracks with a couple of my colleagues. You can find it at, I'm going to put it in the chat window for those of you who are here. Let me just add it.
Promo opportunity.
I know, my boss will be happy. Okay, cool. So it's IBM.biz/IBM ZDay. I'm running a lot of sessions. We'll have startup activities. We'll have introductory coding activities. We're doing a 24-hour codeathon. So wait for it.
And we're having a student-led track as well. So what's more, why do you want to miss it?
Exactly. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.